Hello and welcome to this video and to October's book review. Yeah, it's not really a reading slump because I'm reading, but that feeling from September continued into October and everything took me way longer to read than I thought it would or should. If you saw September's video, you know I ended the month on Intermezzo, which plummeted me a little bit, and that has continued in that I'm only managing to read like 30 pages a night, which normally I was up to the 50-60, which, I mean, 30 is still good, but it's obviously less than I'm used to. So it's one of those where I'm reading it and I'm not fully concentrating, even my mind's wandering slightly, and I don't know whether that's the books or whether that's just the mood I'm in at the moment, and these books just haven't had a fair shot. But there are a few to talk about today, so let's get on into it. So the first book that I read in October, because I needed something light-hearted and one that I thought I would enjoy after Intermezzo, so I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is the first book in, I think it's the Dream Harbour series, and I'd heard mixed things about it going in, but I actually quite enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars in the end. So in this one we are following Jeannie. She has something happens in her life that means that she sort of leaves her life in the city. She goes to Dream Harbour where she takes on her aunt's cafe while her aunt goes off travelling, semi-retirement, that kind of thing. But things keep happening. And she enlists the help of the farmer Logan, who is grumpy, so we're looking at a bit of a grumpy sunshine trope in this, and obviously romance ensues from there. I think the main thing I liked about this was actually the setting. Like, Dream Harbour itself is like a small quaint town. I really liked the cast of characters in it and look forward to reading the rest of the series and meeting some of them more in their stories and exploring that. This is cheesy. There probably is a hint of insta-love to it, but it's exactly what I needed at the time that I read it. I enjoyed sort of the hijinks and the situations that Jeannie and Logan got themselves into. I also like how their relationship develops. Although the attraction is quite instant, the acting on it isn't. There is a bit of tension in this book, but I did roll my eyes a bit at the conflict and sort of just wanted them to kind of have a chat rather than go through the third act breakup stuff that we always have to go to in these romance books at the moment. The other thing I'd heard about these books is that they were like full of spice, and yeah, there were some spicy scenes, but there was less of it than I anticipated. I don't know whether other ones in the series, they're just here, these ones, whether that ramps up a bit, but on the whole the levels of it were fine for me, and I enjoyed it, and as I say, I look forward to delving more into Dream Harbour as a setting and meeting the other people that are in it. So yeah, 4 stars, enjoyed my time with The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. After that one I finished Happy Place by Emily Henry, and again gave this one 4 stars. I have been reading this book probably since about August, and the reason why it took me so long is not because of the book itself, but the format. So O2 do these like Blue Monday deals, and one of them once was to get a free book, and of the choice that I had there I picked Happy Place, but it did mean I had to read it on my phone, and I don't like reading on my phone, and I can't read on my phone before I go to sleep. I have to have a different medium, like no blue light kind of thing, so my Kindle or a book, so that's why it took so long, because the time to just sit and read on my phone never really felt like time, so that's why it took a long time for me to read, but I did enjoy it. Again, in this one we are following Harriet and Wynne, I think their names are, and they have been dating for a long time, but split up and don't tell their friends, but every summer they go to this house in some part of America that I can't remember, but near the sea, and their friendship group sort of has this holiday, but obviously they haven't told any of their friends, so when they go for that summer and it's supposed to be their last summer doing this, so it's a big deal. They try and hide it from everyone. So this is very much a second chance romance. It's another one of those ones where a lot of the book could have just been bypassed if they'd just spoken to each other a bit more. But as I say, I know then we wouldn't have had a story. So I didn't hate the miscommunication in this one. I semi-understood where it was coming from, and I got that if they didn't have it there wouldn't be a story, but again, if they'd just spoken to each other, a lot of this would have passed. Again, it's one of those books that I really enjoyed the setting, although I can't remember at all where it is. The actual idea of this house by the sea and them going every year at this certain time of year and going visiting their special haunts and things like that did add a lot for me for the book, along with the friendship bonds that they have in their group. So they're 3 couples basically, and they've been friends since university, and sort of going through that and navigating friendships as you get older and priorities change and all of that kind of thing. I enjoyed that aspect of the book as well. One of the reasons why it got 4 stars is there are a few moments in it that I found were out of character for Wyn or Harriet. You feel like you've got to know them to a certain extent, and then they do something and you're like, that doesn't seem right. And again, as I say, miscommunication. Also, really didn't like the format. I don't really want to read a book on my phone again, but I suppose if I ever got another free one then I would, but that's not a format that works for me. So yeah, 4 stars for Happy Place by Emily Henry. Throughout the month I've been listening to an audiobook, so I listened to Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, and that was narrated by Trevor White. And I gave this one 2.5 stars. It's one of those ones that's been on my Kindle, so way back when I set myself a challenge that I've basically failed at most months. And one of those was to try and read some of the backlist stuff on my Kindle, certainly the ones that I'm going to potentially lose when I upgrade my Kindle in the near-ish future. So when I found this on my library app, I thought, yeah, let's do that one. I stupidly, probably didn't realise this was a war book. That is its sort of central focus, is the war, and the characters are pilots and how many missions they have to fly and that kind of thing. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure I followed all of the story because it felt like it was told in circles. So you'd have a circle, then you'd get a little bit more information, so sort of like that. Like a spiral, I guess. You get a little bit more with each chapter, and I'm not 100% sure I followed it because of the circular nature to the way it was written or the way it was put together. There were a few moments that made me chuckle, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest, but some of it did make me chuckle. And there were so many characters to keep up with, and that was part of it. So along with, as I say, that circular storytelling structure, there was a lot of people to try and remember who they were and how they linked and all of that kind of stuff, and I think all of that together just made me lose the main thread a little bit on the story. But it did really show sort of the absurdity of war quite well. I don't know when this was written, but obviously closer to the World Wars than now, and sort of the reasons that people were making the decisions didn't really have anything to do with any tactical aspects. I mean, I'm not saying that's actually necessarily what happened, but you know, that was sort of where this was going with it. Oh, there we go, I've written it in my notes. It was written in the 60s, so there are also quite a bit of sort of sexist language, and all women are there for sex and not a lot else. Again, that might be linking to the whole soldier stereotype kind of thing, being away from home, but with today's lens it didn't quite work that way. So yeah, there's another one that I've managed to come off my Kindle, and I wasn't expecting to enjoy it, so I enjoyed it more than I thought, but also wasn't one that is going to stay with me for too long, I don't think. So yeah, that was Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Then I went into my first sort of Halloween related read, so I read Immortality by Dana Schwartz. This is the sequel to Anatomy, which I really enjoyed, so it did end on some sort of weird idea, so I wanted to go into this one to see what happened next. I also absolutely adore these covers. The first one's a heart, this one's a brain, but also women in dresses. This one disappointed me, unfortunately. As much as I enjoyed the first book, this one didn't seem to add too much to it, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. So there was enough in it for me to enjoy, but compared to the first one, I didn't think it was quite as strong, and was left a bit disappointed. Again, we are back with Hazel, who is a wannabe surgeon, but in a time where women aren't really allowed or do that kind of role. And in this, she has moved to London to be the physician for the princess, and things go from there. I found this one very slow to get into, and not much happened for the first like 70 odd pages. Then when we did get into the story, I found there were too many big topics to explore, like big storylines to explore, that we never really got into any of them well enough. So there were too many ideas, and then we were too slow to get into it, and the pacing of it just didn't quite work for me at all. I liked being back with Hazel and her quest to be a surgeon, and I found those parts interesting, but on the whole I didn't like where she took this book. I know it's just a duology, but I don't think this one was really necessary, and it's a shame, because as I say, I was actually really looking forward to it because I enjoyed the first one so much. It's quite hard for me to talk about any real thing in this without giving too much away, so that's probably where I'm going to leave it for this book. Would recommend Anatomy. Maybe give this one a miss. And it's really shiny because I've had to have the lights on because it's November and it's grey and raining. So yeah, that's Immortality by Dana Schwartz. Then I moved on to my book club book, which is one that as soon as it came out, as soon as it got released that we were doing this, I really wasn't looking forward to, for two reasons. And that book is Out There Screaming, which is edited by Jordan Peele, who is the director of things like Get Out and Nope and that. This is a horror short story collection. I do not read horror, I do not like short stories. So I went into this with very low expectations and ended up giving it 2.5 stars. I appreciate the choice of this for October, because obviously the genre selected was spooky read for Halloween. That's what the book club had voted on, but it's also Black History Month in October, and this is all black authors, so I appreciate the thought and the sentiment behind picking this book for the book club read in October. It's just not one I really wanted to read, and there were maybe 4 or 5 stories that I enjoyed enough to some extent. So we're looking at, I'm going to pick my phone up for this so I don't forget the names of them: The Rider, Dark House, A Bird Sings by the Etching Tree, and Happy Place were the 4 that I quite enjoyed, but even for short stories these were too short, so you never got a lot out of it. It didn't feel like you ever really got into a story to have a real succinct beginning, middle and end, and also there didn't feel like there was anything linking this collection together other than the fact that it's supposed to be horror and that they're black authors, although at no point was I at all scared. I think the closest one I got to was Dark House, and that was because it was about you know, someone coming into your house. Went on a different tangent, but that's essentially the thing. Her, like, your Ring doorbell and stuff kept going off and that kind of stuff, and the dog was upset. So that was the closest I got to being at least a little creeped out, a little eerie, but at no point did I feel scared, which I mean I'm glad about, because that was one of the things I was most apprehensive about going into a horror book before, but yeah, didn't really do anything. I also feel I don't know enough about African, Caribbean ghost stories to really get a lot out of this book. A lot of it was relying on those kind of myths, and I don't know them, so it meant nothing to me. It was just another word that I was reading. Maybe if I had a bit more knowledge on that, it might have had a bit more of an impact. I don't know. Could be entirely wrong on that aspect, but that was sort of the feeling I had. And as I said, I wouldn't say it was horror, it wasn't scary. I'd say it's more sort of magical realism across this one. So yeah, 2.5, which was better than I thought it was going to be. There were a couple of stories that I didn't mind and some that I perhaps actively enjoyed. But yeah, won't be holding on to it, and yet another semi-flop for the book club. So yeah, Out There Screaming, edited by Jordan Peele, was our book club pick. And the last book that I read in October was Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco, giving this one 3.5 stars again. I hate this cover because I don't like snakes, but that's an aside. This is following Amelia. Her twin sister Victoria is brutally murdered, and she's essentially off on a quest to find out why and who did it. And in doing that, she summons up a demon. In this world, they are all linked to the 7 deadly sins, so she summons wrath, and between them they go ahead and try and solve this murder. I thought it was an interesting concept, but again, because they were trying to shoehorn in a murder mystery, fantasy elements, a romance, and probably a lot of other parts, things got muddled in my head. That happened a lot this month, and that's partly because I wasn't 100% concentrating on my books. So things like the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, where it's just a very easy story for me to follow, that's why they scored better than things like this that maybe had a few too many things for my brain to cope with at this moment in time. And another thing I really struggled with this one is I just didn't know where to date it. I didn't know whether we were supposed to be in sort of modern-ish world, whether we were supposed to be in the past. There seemed to be things that linked to both. So I found it really hard to work out where I was in sort of historical timeline to place this book, and I don't know why that had such an issue for me, such an effect on my reading of it. But every time I'm like, yeah, but I don't know where we are, so I can't understand whether this is what's going on here. So that was one of my bigger issues with it. I liked the 7 deadly sins angle, but obviously there's 7 of them, so that means there's quite a few characters again to try and follow and comprehend. And there is sort of, as I say, there's a murder mystery storyline, so the twist to that I did kind of guess partway through. And I wasn't very keen on Amelia and her decision making, although it could be argued that that is largely down to grief. Yeah, this is part of a series. I can't see me continuing it, so I think I might be one and done for this one. But yeah, not the greatest reading month, not the greatest end to the month, but hey, there's more books off my shelf. So that was The Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. And as I said, that is October's reading, and I'm hoping that with the books that I've got planned for November, which, spoiler, is mainly Bridgerton because I didn't get to my one in October, so I've got 2 to read. I'm hoping that they're going to be a lot simpler for my brain to follow, and I might actually be able to get back into my groove with reading. It worked last night, so we'll see. So yeah, if you're interested in what's coming up in November, click that subscribe button. If you've enjoyed this one, please give it a thumbs up, and if you've got any comments on anything that I've spoken about, put them in the box below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!